Gonzaga might not make the tournament. Yeah, there's a chance they might not make the tournament this year.
The numbers told the story. They always do.
It's one of those idiots who believe in analytics.
This is a numbers game with Gil Alexander on VSiN.
It's that time of the show where we get to go through some of these yes-no tourney odds. And again, it's following on the college basketball theme. We'll get to some NFL stuff. I mentioned Daniel Jeremiah just dropped his mock draft 2.0. There's one interesting switch
I'm
that he's already
this
made
right now.
from his mock draft 1.0. I'm always fascinated. Again, the mock draft 1.0 just happened. So what in the last week has taken place to make Daniel switch a very high-profile player at the top? We'll get to that in a minute. But we want to continue the college basketball conversation for just a moment here because new market here on DraftKings. Over the last week or so, you're starting to see yes-no tourney odds populate the market. We'll probably get more teams over the next couple of weeks, but a decent start here. And I think if we look at this graphic, and there's about 12 teams on this list, 13 teams, Colorado there at the bottom. I think the most intriguing team on either side for me right now is Gonzaga.
And these are all the ones that DraftKings has listed.
This is it,
but
right?
It's like you said, they just posted these 2 days ago. I'm sure they'll
very new.
I'm sure they'll be adding to this. And I'm sure they'll be taking some away from it too as they get closer to looking like they'll be in the tournament or out of it.
I think with these odds, you've got to, especially if you're picking a mid-major, I think you have to frame it two different ways, right? If you're picking a Texas A&M or a Nebraska or a Butler, right, you're handicapping the non-conference schedule. You're handicapping what they've done in the non-conference and just their overall vibe in their conference. In the case of a Grand Canyon or a Gonzaga, you are handicapping, in my opinion, the conference tournament. Maybe not so much with Grand Canyon, definitely with Gonzaga. I don't know if Gonzaga has enough chops to make the tournament just based on their at-large resume. I think they're going to have to win. By the way, that tournament will be played about 10 miles north of here south of here at the Orleans Casino.
I was just going to say 10 miles north of here. That's going to be interesting.
South. I had to get my bearings for a minute. About 10 miles south of where we are here in downtown Las Vegas at the Orleans Casino. Interesting place, very interesting place for a college basketball tournament. But that is where the West Coast Conference Tournament historically plays their conference championship. I think they're going to have to beat St. Mary's. I think they're going to have to win that conference tournament. So you look on the no side, plus 220. Is Gonzaga going to be a big enough underdog in that game to warrant a no bet? I think maybe yes. And I think that's because they're probably going to be a 3 or a 4 point dog on a neutral. Now you have to handicap the other games as well. The West Coast Conference does that unique style where I think you only have to win 2 games, I think, to win the tournament. I might be wrong on the exact format in the bracket, but they have a smaller conference tournament. So I think Gonzaga would only have to win. I think if they're a 4 seed or higher, you have to win 3. If they're the 1 or the 2 seed, I think they're going to be the 2 seed. You only have to
win.
That
double bye or whatever.
Double bye, and then you only have to win your semifinal game, and then you're in the championship. So Gonzaga, theoretically speaking, again, if you are of the belief that they are not an at-large team, there's only 2 games on their schedule that matter for this particular market, and that is both of those conference tournament games, theoretically semifinal and final. They're probably going to be a double-digit favorite in the semifinal against some bad West Coast Conference bottom feeder, and then they'll play St. Mary's, hypothetically, in the final, and they're going to be an underdog in that game. And I don't know if they're going to be a huge underdog in that game, but you're telling me the yes is minus $3, I think I would bet the no on Gonzaga right now. Because then you could always come back on St. Mary's on the money line in that championship game, and you would theoretically be covering your bet. Now, maybe the at-large situation's changed for Gonzaga over the last week, but that Kentucky win helps. But I still think overall body of work, it's going to be tough for them to get in as an at-large.
Now, this is kind of an unfair question because you like to know on this anyways, but does this pricing for this just speak to the lack of good teams that are going to be making that are going to getting or at-large bids?
I think it's the Gonzaga name brand.
Okay.
I think a lot of it is it is very hard to price this market.
Yeah.
There is no power ratings for grading how the tournament committee views these teams. We are kind of arbitrarily priced. Kind of reminds me of like the dunk contest pricing. We're handicapping voters and judges trying to, committee select these teams. Obviously, they're not in the top 16, which was the committee just, released that over the weekend. But I don't know if Gonzaga's an at-large team right now. Now, this market is telling you they might be based off of the price.
Yeah.
But I think the price might be overinflating Gonzaga because of the name brand just a little bit. So while I'm not running to the window to bet the no on Gonzaga, if I were to make one wager in this market right now, if you said, here's $100, Jared, you have to pick one of these 13 teams, no on Gonzaga is where I put my $100.
It's going to be interesting to see how these move too, right? Because in theory, I don't want to suggest this. Anybody do this, but monitor maybe for next season. If how many over these last few final weeks, how many times could you grab a small plus price on Villanova for the yes, come back later on and play a no on them?
Villanova's an interesting team. They've played it a little. Actually, I'm glad you mentioned that because they have been playing a little bit better. Recently, just beat Seton and Georgetown back-to-back. Of course, those aren't great teams, but in the Big East, anytime you're 500 in the Big East, I think you've got a puncher's chance. But they don't have the non-com. Actually, they actually do. They beat UNC in overtime. They beat Texas Tech. Actually, let's leave it at this. Nova's got a better resume than Gonzaga does in terms of their non-conference schedule. Hey, Gonzaga's best wins at Kentucky. It's a great win, but that's their best win. Like, they don't have another top 50 non-conference win. That's it. And frankly, the way Kentucky's played this year, it's been so volatile. But that win for Kentucky the other night against Auburn was absolutely huge. So this is an interesting market. This is a market I will pay attention to because it reminds me a lot of the MVP markets, the awards markets. You are not handicapping. You are, in a sense, more so than an MVP. You're not handicapping the teams as much as you are the committee. And the historical trends that the committee has used with a lot of these mid-major teams trying to get an at-large. Do they favor the high-major team that plays in a tougher the West Coast Conference this year is really bad, historically bad. So they don't have a lot of those good wins to bank off of, and they don't have those historical Gonzaga wins from non-conference schedule that just you would think that maybe, if you just rolled out of bed and you're like, wait a minute, Gonzaga might not make the tournament. Yeah, there's a chance they might not make the tournament this year, although the pricing says they will. I think there might be a little bit of value on the no.